I'm Graeme Hutton. I'm the SVP Director of Consumer Insights at University of McCann, or UM as we like to call it. And today I was talking about the globalization of brands from a social media perspective. And there's a number of key things that we do that. We've, since 2006, UM has been doing a global tracker. It's currently up to its 5th annual wave. It has about 38,000 people within that, over 50 countries. And so we're able to determine quite a lot of shifts that people don't even realize are happening, are quite major in social media. The ones that we talked about today were really focused on about 6 to 8 key areas. And the first one that really comes out is that we tend to think of social media being social networks, but social media also includes blogs and a whole host of other forms of video sharing websites, photo sharing websites and things like that. But what's actually happened is that social networks have actually come to dominate social media and represent it in all forms. More important than that is the primary way in which people now keep in contact with one another is through social networks. Just 2 years ago, it used to be face-to-face and email, and now social networks have literally come out of, well, in the last 5 or 6 years, from nowhere to be the dominant form. They've changed global consumer behavior to that extent, which is quite massive indeed. The other thing that we've seen as a backlash to that, which has come as quite a surprise to everybody, and a lot of people can't quite believe it yet, is that the backlash is that as social media have grown, people's visits to company websites, official company websites, is actually on the decline. So that if you're a packaged goods advertiser and you're not you're only using your own website, you're not using, say, Facebook or something like that, that has become a big issue. And you're going to lose out. It's only dropped by 10% globally, but in the US it's dropped by 1/4. So, and that's in 2 years. And we can see that by looking at ComScore data as well. The other things that have happened, I would say, are we've seen a move to content sharing. I was talking just now about photo sites and video sites and blog sites. People are tending to shift those to social networks. They're becoming more popular. We're also seeing the rise of media meshing caused by micro-blogging services such as Twitter. What media meshing is, it's the consumption of 2 or more media together to enhance your total experience. A classic form would be, say you're watching a TV show and you've got a smartphone device and you suddenly have a question about an actor or an actress you see on screen. So you'd reach for your smartphone and you'd Google them, and you'd find out more about that actress straight away. A real-world example with this, where we're looking at Twitter and the Super Bowl this year, and as the ads appeared on the Super Bowl, they were going to the top of the global Twitter rankings. Now this is quite profound, because what we're saying is that a US show and the ads within that US show were reaching the top of the global Twitter rankings. That's quite profound, and it shows that 2 media being used together, this media meshing technique, which is really driving some forms of social media. We think microblogging is an area that's going forward. And finally, there's the way in which people want to interact with brands, and the principal reason people are using social media to interact with brands is to get advanced news, to get to know there's unique competitions or events or things that are going on. And sometimes in certain parts of the world, such as Latin America, a key driver is to be part of a movement. If it's cool, then Latin Americans feel they want to be a part of that, for example. The other thing is that as people join social communities, they are more likely to buy a brand. About 58% say they're more likely to buy a brand. And finally, I would say that one of the biggest shocks for us was that 18% of people say that they have created brand communities on their own. That's independent of marketer or advertisers. So if they want to go to Coca-Cola or Pepsi and they don't like what they see, they're more likely to set up their own social networks or social communities. And that's a big change, because that means people are taking charge of their own relationship with brands.
And when you say they're setting up those communities on a site like Facebook, so a fan page around Coke or a hate page around my cell phone provider?
Oh yeah, a classic would be a cell phone provider or a bank, you know, those sorts of areas where it's fairly easy to set up a website, but it's particularly easy to set up a fan page for a particular community that you want to support and promote in some way. And so people are doing that to an increasing extent. It's about 18% globally. The US is trailing that, it's around 10%. But nevertheless, if you think about it, you know, 1 in 10 users of the internet are creating their own you know, brand communities. That's a very large number because they've actively got to go out their way to do that.
You had mentioned you know, video sharing before, and you know, one of the things we're seeing an explosion of is brands as content producers, and I kind of think of the dominant form of content they're excited about is video. So the 3.5-minute brand video or the mini documentary that somehow has the brand associated with it. So can you talk about kind of brands producing video content discoverability and sharing among consumers as well? Yeah,
I mean, the whole point about sort of like long format ads or long format videos is that they have to have some form of virality about them. And we know that obviously the most powerful form of virality is where it's either highly humorous or highly creative. And if it makes people laugh or it gets them involved, then they want to share. One of the big differences that we know between, say, online word of mouth and virality and sharing long form ads or videos, and people just in general conversation, you know, where they'll reference brands, is that, you know, you reference brands face to face or in a one-to-one situation, almost casually. It's almost to like keep the conversation going. It's almost in an ambient way. Whereas when you do it online, you're doing it for a purpose. You're either doing it because you found it very interesting or exciting, or you found, you know, it says something about you, or because you found something new, unique or funny, and you want to share that with something and it has a purpose to it. So when advertisers are thinking about creating long format ads, they have to say, well, what are we going to do to the ad that will give it purpose, that will make people want to share it? Because if it doesn't have that either humor or point of news that is different, that will reflect well on the sender of that viral ad or that viral video, then it's not going to go very far. That said, you shouldn't expect to be, you know, an Old Spice. You shouldn't expect to be a subservient chicken. And I think, you know, everybody still goes along with that idea. Instead, I'd say what really matters is that if you have a media campaign, you should actually say as part of your campaign structure, what viral lift can I get? And if you could get a 50% increase in exposure, not the 100% that you might get with a subservient chicken or an Old Spice. If you can get a 50% lift in your media exposure from a video ad, that's a spectacular lift in your campaign performance that you could plan on quite a regular basis if you followed some simple rules about how to engage people in their communication and in their social media habits.
When you say 50% lift in exposure, that's related to what? To actually spending money on paid advertising?
Yeah, sorry, I meant that's what I meant. Yes. So for instance, if you'd got a TV campaign, an online campaign, so where you might be spending $2 or $3 million or say $5 million, and that might give you a certain level of exposure on television and video. What you'd look for in your viral lift is to say, well, if I got, say, 75% of people 4 times, you know, can I get another, say, 30% of people twice, and you know, or even once? Because once you've seen a video ad, you're unlikely to see it again. But if you can get an incremental, you know, reach or exposure level about 50% of your paid advertising into your earned advertising through video formats, or people sharing your owned video formats, then I think that's a marked improvement. And this hybrid approach, this viral lift approach, I think is something that we'll see increase to quite some extent over the next 2 or 3 years.
You just mentioned the fact that people don't like to see the same ad multiple times.
Yeah.
Yet every time I go on to an online website where I'm watching video, I see the same ad over and over. Is that a function of, I mean, does the advertiser want their ad shown 20 times in a row to me, or is it just the ad network delivering the ads is just, that's all it does? And
it's a very fair question. I mean, what we're talking about here is ad wear out. You know, how often do people actually want to see an ad? And that's changed dramatically. I mean, I have actually come across some marketers who still go by the old P&G rules invented like 2 decades ago, where they used to believe that 20 opportunities to see, 20 exposures to the television ad was fine before you got wear out.
But over what period of time?
Well, that would be generally, say, a year or so. But you know, that would be an annual campaign. But what's happened is that you can see the you know, we reduced that down to about 12 about 2 or 3 years ago. Now we've reduced that down to 8. We think that the average person doesn't want to see an ad more than about 8 times. And one of the reasons for that is that people have just become much more media literate. They understand that, you know, as soon as they see an ad, they get it. They understand not only what the message is, but they understand all the nuances of all the editing and all the way in which the ad is talking to them in various ways. And so this increased media literacy means that they don't need to see the ad as much as they used to. 8 is the absolute cap on an ad over a year, never mind, you know, if you see it all in one night, God forbid, but you know, that can actually happen. And so advertisers need to put on frequency caps onto their ads. Now they can do that, but a remarkable number of advertisers don't do that, particularly when they've got like a favorite site or something like that. And they need to put frequency caps on that. And they need to think of ways of reducing the costs of their TV ads so that, you know, the $1 million 30-second commercial really shouldn't be, you know, should be seen as an indulgence these days. And we should be looking at cheaper formats to actually get more varied formats out so that people's interest is kept up and people don't get turned off by these ads.